welcome everybody. My name is Billy Alcaide. My advisor is Professor DePonte, and my thesis is Therapeutic Architecture, Design Considering Mental Health Issues of the General Public. So, the focus of this presentation will be configuring and researching optimal design methods for any building typology to ease mental health issues such as anxiety and general depression, and the advocation for the use of these methods in building design. So the definition of therapeutic architecture can be described as the people-oriented, evidence-based discipline of the built environment, which aims to which aims to identify this and support ways of incorporating design elements that interact with people psychologically in a positive manner. So to some background on what I'm about to talk about today for the literature part is Stephen Keller, and then the common themes that were discovered during research. This is Stephen Keller. He is a professor of social ecology and a senior research scholar at the University of Yale, the School of Forestry and Environmental Studies. He's a major advocate for biophilic design, as his nickname is the godfather of biophilia. His works are the most popular within the literature sources of his thesis. He mentions numerous times about his methods when utilizing nature to a personal level. His work helps with the focus of understanding the connection between nature and humanity. According to his findings, design and development that only satisfies the physical and materialistic portions of design will not succeed, as well as considering biophilic attractions of nature for the occupant's mental well-being and design. The decision to enhance natural lighting affects the occupant's mental well-being positively. So the takeaway themes is the sense of healing, connections to nature, utilization of space, and lighting. Start off with healing. Many of the sources continue to emphasize the significance of human-based design. Focus on the people who need healing leans towards therapeutic design methods. Analyzing the human's relationship within the built environment and their needs concerning healing, being comfortable, and mental health is crucial. So the next theme is connections to nature. Through efficiently placing fenestration and incorporating the greenery into buildings, help relieve the negative feelings of stress that leads to anxiety and depression. Many of the sources throughout the research portion of this thesis are advocating biophilic design to enhance mental well-being. Biophilic design is not a popular method of design in the U.S. There's only 43 registered buildings according to the International Living Future Institute. Utilization of space. The openness of space plays a crucial role in design. Smaller spaces affect the occupant negatively, but efficient utilization of the small space and its attributes is key. Creating openness within the center creates a sense of gathering to the space, which makes the outer surroundings feel larger. The occupant feels more comfortable through the openness of the space, and you'll see a lot of examples later on in the presentation. The last theme is lighting. The combination of natural and artificial lighting gives a positive reinforcement to the occupant within the built environment. Having a balance of both has been proven to enhance human performance and emotional well-being. Many of the studies throughout the research showed that rooms without the connection to the outside makes the occupants feel the least comfortable and tend to not perform at best. So now, would you rather occupy the bedroom on the left or the bedroom on the right? Personally, me on the right. Would you rather eat dinner on the left or eat dinner on the right in this dining? Again, me on the right. Now this atrium, which space would you rather occupy? Left or right? These comparisons share all the common themes on the photos on the right. They share the connection to nature, ample lighting, and well-designed spaces for the occupants to enjoy. Now to move on to Precedent. We're going to talk about the space of the hangar in Kenmore, Washington. It was designed by Graham Baba Architects in 2017. So the openness to the outdoors is positive in the space. The shed roof leading towards the garage doors as well. Spacing of the tables. The wood materiality from the walls and ceilings help the occupant feel warmth and comfort. Moving on to the nature of the building. The balance and proportion between the building and the existing landscape is interactive with numerous places for seating. Vegetation also surrounds the side views of for the occupants within the building. The lighting. Maximize natural lighting as the broadside faces south, creating enough diffuse lighting without the use of artificial lighting during the day. Minimal but enough artificial lighting from the ceiling hangs for the evening hours. Moving on to the second precedent, the National Museum of African American History and Culture. It was designed by David Alcaide and the Bond Smith Group in 2016. Many of the nodes contain small seating areas for taking in the exhibit spaces, but they contain the openness to make it not seem as if the occupant is in a small space. Many of the spaces within the building is filled with ceremonial spaces throughout the whole tour and makes visitors feel a spiritual connection to its exhibits. Moving on to the nature of the site. The site is filled with numerous seating that is surrounded by vegetation and grass for tourists to interact with the site. The building stands at 85 feet tall, which also gives off shading for the people surrounding the building, as it is a humid environment. Lastly, we're going to talk about lighting again. There is a balance between artificial and natural lighting throughout the entire building, as well as entering the building. Within the transition spaces, there is maximum natural lighting coming through the large windows and the exterior bronze panels, as you can see in this photo. Next precedent is the Gilded Iguana Hotel Fitness Center in Nosara, Costa Rica. It was designed by Studio Sachs in 2019. All the spaces throughout the hotel athletic center are large and are open. This is the jiu-jitsu / boxing room. The glass walls create an even larger environment that is common throughout the other rooms throughout the fitness center. And the nature of the environment, the athletic center is fully connected with greenery, surrounding and in contact with the building. Transition spaces are almost all outside to get from room to room. Interior spaces are meant to feel open to nature to connect the occupants to the beauty of the island. And the lighting of this hotel, the hotel rooms that are on the ground floor have access to the outdoors, containing large windows, as you can see in this photo, and doors to bring out the light into the space. And as you can see, there are minimal lamps and LED strips on the top to diffuse the light coming down to the lower space. So to conclude and moving forward, there is no formula that designers can create a positive emotional bond between a person and a place. Psychologists call this place attachment. Philip Johnson's glass house in Connecticut, for example, has been a form of attraction that architects across the country admire, just as it has been prevalent in our undergraduate history courses. But still, designers and planners can increase the likelihood that helps humans develop the emotional connection by creating places that are attractive, encouraging social interaction, and invite people to linger, just as this glass house. So moving forward, I will be looking to maximizing and balancing the natural and artificial lighting that will water the seed that caters to general human health. Interior designing spaces um, that promote healing and mental and physical well-being, and incorporating the nature throughout the built environment. Thank you.
So, Billy, how are you? I'm sounding a little like a broken record, but how are you? What are you thinking of doing to test your thesis question?
What do you mean by that?
Well, you're certainly, when you show the A versus B, anybody who's in this community, right,
Mm-hmm.
is going to recognize that the ones that were on the right are better designed. They kind of follow all of the guidelines that we kind of hold dear as as contemporary designers, right? They're better spaces, there's more connection to the natural environment, they better use natural lighting. So I mean, of course those are right. You talk about a lot of interest in this biophilic philosophy as a good one, right? And the idea that architecture can be therapeutic, which is certainly not only a valid aspiration, but something that's relevant to a couple other projects that we've seen today. So I guess my question goes back to, if knowing how to make a building that's better than the average, of course we're going to do that, right? We expect you to do that. But my question is, what are you? I mean, a thesis question is essentially testing a hypothesis, right? So and doing it through a building. So how are you gonna test where the boundary of this is? Because at the moment, I mean, to say, I'm going to make a good X, based on biophilic design, I mean, okay, but how are you going to know that it's better because it's biophilic, right? Or if the idea is to be therapeutic, do you have a program in mind where this notion that the building can be part of kind of a process of creating a better, healthier environment becomes more pronounced, right? I mean, I think I don't think as a society, there's not enough recognition that good architecture is part of good health, right? But I guess the question is there a place where you can say, here is a particularly acute situation where this matters to test it?
Yeah, so I feel like considering where the site will be, which is unknown still, but considering wherever it will be, and kind of just looking into the more how the human relationship acts with the built environment in that site, as well as how the surrounding neighborhoods are, because throughout this whole research and design process, I have been emphasizing a lot about just like human needs, and really listening to that, and that will cater me through the process and moving forward.
Okay, so I think site is a good point. So then I would say maybe you need to kind of give yourself a challenge with that. So, because, for instance, if you were to build something where Thorn Crown Chapel is located, I would say, Thorn Crown Chapel's an exemplar, but the context would be easy to do, right? Whereas I would say, if you look at the house that was designed, that Bridget Shim lives in Toronto, Bridget Shim of Shim Sutcliffe, they took what was considered kind of an undevelopable sliver in an urban environment and created a place that has many of the characteristics that you're holding up as ideal, right? By using kind of as much as intelligence as they could embody in this building to do that. right? And to me, like, that's the kind of test I'm hoping you will do, right? Because if you put it in a bucolic spot, I mean, like, you know, the Glass House by Philip Johnson is, I mean, part of the reason that works is because he's in a very bucolic, high-end environment in a very pretty urban, you know, in New Canaan, Connecticut, right? You know, so in some ways it's easy. I mean, not that, you know, it's not a noteworthy project, but it's easier because of its context, right? So again, it comes down to how do you kind of pull it out of the context as opposed to just take advantage of what's there naturally, right?
Yeah. Right. You're muted. You're muted, Fred.
Hey, I thought you did a really great job presenting, Billy, and I really appreciate that comment from Dean Temkin, because I think it's also, you know, about, he used the word, how will you test, right? The thesis question. How do you self-evaluate? How do you self-evaluate, right? How do you test or evaluate what you're asking? And he gave one example, and I love that example of, you know, taking maybe a site that's not so bucolic or a community or a user group. One of the tenets of biophilic design is the educational piece. To qualify as a biophilic building, your building needs to somehow demonstrate in physical embodiment how it's either regenerating energy or recycling rainwater, or, you know, so there's an interesting piece about education, which I think maybe could help, maybe could be another example. So maybe it's choosing a demographic or a site that's traditionally not getting some of those tenets, like a typical office building. You know, think about like that typical day in a cubicle. But you chose, you know, a specific site that was linked to a community. You could actually have a theoretical project where you are in contact with that community, and then your work and your documentation could become sort of educational tools, and you could document your process and get feedback from that community. I'm thinking of Courtney Hill's thesis project, where she did an office building in Manhattan for, how did she phrase it? For workers with limited sight, you know, visual sight. And she devised a set of design guidelines based on surveying and communicating with a group that worked with blind folks in New York City. And so they responded, and from their responses, she devised, you know, the building needs to have X, Y, and Z. And then after setting up these guidelines, she used those to design the structure, right? So in a sense, you have the guidelines, you have those biophilic tenets, but maybe what you're missing is that user group or that demographic that you can measure, you know, how those guidelines are working.
Yeah.
Or how those guidelines would start to affect that scenario.
All right, thank you, Billy.